Shifting gears.
Europhilia. Let's go.
This poem. Oh, it's something.
Good old-fashioned, wholesome Europhilia. Yum, yum, yum.
I was like, should I wear a raincoat? Should I get an umbrella? Like, how should I intro?
It's time, guys. The time has come.
It is time. All right. It is here. The Toaster Roast with none other than Alexis Sears. Special guest, talented writer, author of Out of Order, whose book is completely in order and awesome. Everyone should order it. We'll have links up and all that good stuff. So please welcome back Alexis Sears. And they have suggested a poem that is unlike anything I've read before. I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin. I will.
Alexis is very mean. Because she's making us all read it together.
Right. We'll see who cracks first. So I am ready. Got my poker face on. So we are going to be reading Sliding My Tongue Along a Gold Mirror by Josh Tvrdy. We'll probably get trashed for just butchering that name. Our apologies. Okay. Sliding my tongue along a gold mirror. 7. Cramped room with my sound asleep brothers. I fantasize filth. Rivers of piss I need to cross. Glasses of spit and sweat I need to drink, or else what? Punishment? A pallid hand forcing the glass to my lips? I tell nobody. My silence delicious. Slick imaginings tucked inside my mind's velvet folds. Even now, I know my wantings tilted, ingrown, and I don't care. Not yet. Curiosity hasn't curdled. What the body can't keep or keep for long feels holy. Precious excess, sour honey, oceans of piss and spit and sweat and me, an island, a tongue in a bucket of salt.
10. I steal a plastic cup inside the shower, piss it half full, drink myself down. I don't hate the taste, like running my tongue along a warm mirror. And don't do it just once. My nightly play, my body taking back its golden oil.
13. Udall Park. Alone, in a public bathroom, afraid some hairy-armed dad will burst inside. I pluck a pubic hair from a neon blue urinal cake, then drop it, sleek, coiled, a cursive letter on my tongue.
14. I watched Dad watch what I watched late last night on the family computer. A man wearing nothing but leather, lapping a month-old piss from a piss trough. This is yours, Dad says. Not a question. His face blue with screen glow, his eyes strapped to that leather man. I want to yank the cord from the wall, want to touch his shoulder and apologize, but I can't move, can't explain myself. Dad wrenches his eyes away, says nothing, leaves the room. The screen still flashing.
15. Alone, older brother beating on the locked bedroom door. He needs to shit. I rip my pubes in pinched clumps, my skin pink, raw, color of evening primroses, flowers which sprout in our front yard like sickness.
17. Parents long asleep. I piss inside a plastic bottle. Stash it under my bed. Way back, and for months it festers. Yellow turns gold, turns orange, turns cider brown, and just the briefest sniff leaves me dizzy with wanting.
20. Finally away from home, I live in a crumbling house owned by an old oil painter, smeared lilacs and tulips on the walls. Most nights I lie in her clawfoot tub, use piss for lube and jack myself off. Afraid she'll hear, I stuff my fist inside my mouth.
I'm 22. I'm into piss. I finally tell A, and A pulls away, asks, Piss? Piss. He laughs, says, I'm not into that, then pushes me flat, bites my lip.
4. Summer sun. So hot it peels paint from sheds. Dad's thumb on the rim of the hose, feathering water. I dance for him, and he smiles, then steps hard, choking the stream to a sputter. The hose trembles. I want him to raise his foot, to release another fountain. Go on.
24. D's pure vanilla. Good at what he does, which is nothing but zipper-lipped kissing, fucking, cuddling, goo-goo, gaga, blah. Long weeks I want his gentleness. Wish my lust would take a tender shape. But tonight, mid-fuck, pinned on his faux leather couch, raw need hooks the words straight out. Piss on me. And D does. He pulls out, waits for his dick to wilt, then spills. And it isn't the piss, but what his piss says, which makes me come, then cry. All right. That was Sliding My Tongue Along a Gold Mirror by Josh Tvrdy. So, all right, Alexis, this was your toaster roast suggestion, so you get to kick off the conversation.
So, I don't think this is the kind of thing that you can toast or roast. Like, I think this is something you look at for 15 minutes and you're like, huh? And then you come back to it a few hours later and sort of do the same thing and then rinse and
Yeah.
repeat. It's funny, I mentioned this poem to my friend Sean at brunch, and he was like, I have to read it immediately. And we just sat there at brunch and, very appetizing subject, sitting there underlining and annotating and,
Mhm.
really, really trying to understand. And I think I finally have started to understand a
Mhm.
little, a little bit. And I could be totally off. But for some reason, I think that this is a poem about absolute self-loathing and loneliness. First of all, okay, I just want to say the part with the dad wrecked me. Like, I don't know. I keep
Mm.
like have like the most secondhand embarrassment. I'm thinking about the dad just sitting there like, this is yours.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
seems like he watches it for a surprisingly long time. Did you get that vibe too?
Yeah.
On the family
yeah.
computer, Josh,
Mhm.
what?
It's called incognito mode, bro. Like, yeah, so it is at first like I was there's that initial like kind of shocked moment where you kind of like, and it's I don't want to say like repulsed by it, but it's definitely one of those poems where it's like it kind of stunned me a little bit. And like I was born in the like the land of hentai, Japan. Like I'm not too shocked by many things. So, but to actually read a poem that is about this particular kink was pretty shocking to me, I have to say. So, the language itself is beautiful, though, in a lot of ways. The scenes, like you said, with the dad are interesting. If you kind of juxtapose the dad kind of discovering what the speaker was watching, and then later on in the poem, though it seems to be like more of a flashback with the what is it, the dad with the hose, I believe, right on the outside, choking the stream to a sputter. Like there's this kind of interesting like family dynamic and like dynamics about the person understanding that this isn't kind of a normal thing to want, but it's also just who they are or what they're into. And I think you definitely nailed it with the idea of like shame and loneliness. Like there's a lot of that feeling of isolation whenever you are any sort of quote unquote deviating from the norm. Just that feeling of like, will this be accepted, or will someone, there's always that sense of, will they still like me or love me if they knew this about me? And I think that is a very relatable feeling, whether it is something involving what you're into or just anything else. I mean, there's so much shame that goes into just growing up as a child, period,
Mhm.
that to have something that's a little more outside the realm of norm, quote unquote, is a really difficult thing, I imagine. I think that comes out in this poem, and I think that comes out in a very, have to say, beautiful way in a lot of ways.
I will say I do really like the breakdown of age in the poem. I feel like it gives this really interesting, multifaceted perspective of how this, I feel wrong calling it a kink because that's how I looked at it at first,
Mhm.
that it's just like a kink but like Alexis said, there's something deeply sad, and almost like, and I've read this poem now, like, because we've had this poem on deck and we've had to reschedule a few times, so I've read it now, like, we in preparation of the show a few times.
Mhm.
And each time I come away with a different feeling about it. Because at first I thought, okay, this is just like another shock poem, or
Mhm.
just kind of like, I want to be so overtly grotesque, and it reminded me of the Chen winter poem that we talked about, where he has that line where he basically blatantly says it's a poem where it's about shit, and
Yeah.
like being sick and having your lover care for you while you're like shitting the bed. But he blatantly like kind of pivots in the poem, and he's like, I don't know the exact line off the top of my head, but he says like, I basically, like, I want to make my enemies throw up. Like, I really,
Mhm.
like, I just want you to be fucking grossed out by like this. And so he states the intention, and that intention is not
Mhm.
stated here. So it's
Mhm.
different to me. This feels like more of not just being like vulnerable, like
Mhm.
just taking something and being just so vulnerable, but almost like an emotional connection to vulnerability, and the layers, and I think that the breaking it down by age kind of helps establish those layers of vulnerability and how they interweave, and I like that it kind of jumps around different ages. I have to say, I feel like I am the dad in this poem. Like that person, like that person,
Yeah.
like, oh, so this is you then, okay. Okay. And like, and that, like, respectfully, okay. Um,
No, it's mom's. That would have really thrown a wrench in the palm if you like denied it. Like, no, actually, it's yours, Dad.
yeah. But yeah, there's so much. Oh my gosh. Okay, like, just kind of a lot of hidden stuff about like human identity and just owning our own darknesses that are happening here. Um it's a lot. But I agree with Michael. Yeah, there's definitely some beautiful lines. Some of the lines, though, I will say, there was one that just felt a little cringy to me, like calling it like golden oil.
Yeah, no, totally.
There's
Yeah.
some cringy moments. And yeah, so I'll say that.
I think, and maybe I'm just reading too much into it, but I don't really think there's such a thing for a poem like this as reading too much into it. But I was under the impression that he always thought this was his kink, and then it finally happened and he hated it. That
Hmm.
was the vibe I got in terms of him crying because, I thought reading this, there was, like I said, a lot of like self-hatred. And I think I noticed that all the stuff about the piss was, with the exception of the porn, it was his own. He was drinking his own. He
Hmm.
was trying to sort of satisfy and satiate himself. But then at the end, I thought when someone finally agreed to piss on him, it sort of confirmed those feelings of wordlessness.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, it
Mhm.
does make sense. I kind of felt like it was a little bit because there was the other lover that was like, yeah, no, I'm sorry, that's not my thing. You know,
Mhm.
I felt like it was more like that sort of like finally someone's letting me be me. Um,
Mm.
and
Mhm.
I don't know, I could be wrong, but I don't know, I felt like it was like a cry of release of like finally like I'm not this is not just my secret of shame that somebody like shared it with me. I don't know, just feeling seen, maybe.
That is so interesting that we
Mhm.
interpret it in sort of opposite ways.
But I feel like I feel like I could have interpreted it the way you did the first time around. Like I've just been around the block with this poem now so many times. But you're right though, Alexis. Like the self-hatred, there's the picking out the pubes, like the
That was
self
a bit
like
much for me.
mutilation kind of stuff, and then there's
Mhm.
the picking off the pube in the urinal. That woo!
That's a step too far. Like there's a certain degree where, like you were saying, Alexis, if it's from your own body, I'm like less, you know, less uh like I don't want to be like mean in any way, but I'm less repulsed if it's from my own body than coming from someone else's body, let's say.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I do like the part though when the other person, when they were just like piss, he laughs, says I'm not into that, then pushes me flat, bites my lip. Like I just like that person's pretty chill. Like that's a pretty nice response, to be honest. They're like, nah. And then they just continue to kiss you. I'm like, hey, that's pretty good. That's a rock solid response from a person. Like I like that little moment, like that. It's not quite what I would call levity, but it is there. It's a little bit of a lessening. I do like the back and forth of the age, kind of seeing that kind of the progression of this or kind of where these thoughts or ideas are coming from. For me, at least, I read it definitely as more of an intimacy thing. Um, at the end, when it says it isn't the piss, but what his piss says, and I think for me, the what it's saying is not necessarily affirming, but just at least a willingness to participate in something. And I think relating it back to that Chen poem, Winter, it is about being at your most vulnerable and having someone still be there with you. And that is I think, a very like frightening place to be, but it's also like where actual unconditional love also lives.
Mhm.
Semi-related, at one point I had to take my best friend to the emergency room. They were having some issues and like they had to give a urine sample. So it's just like me and her sitting with her cup of urine and like we were laughing about that. And it's just one of those moments where it's like that is a part of someone that you really don't have a chance to see unless you are close in a way that is like beyond normal kind of closeness. Like that is like family, like deep family or like deep friendship or when you're caring for someone in a way. And I think that is what it ties into here is that that really deep vulnerability that comes from knowing like someone's bodily fluids, really. I mean, that's these are things that are so private that I think there's that kind of sense of like kind of like ecstasy in it. So that's kind of how I read the poem in general.
I really like what you said just now about vulnerability and caretaking because I think that ties
Mhm.
into, we discussed a little bit how it's broken down by age, and I think there's this
Mhm.
really weird tension between, childhood and this like kinky adult piss stuff, but like 13
Mhm.
when he's talking about the like taking the pube from the urinal cake, sleek
Mhm.
wrote a cursive letter, immediately made me think of a child, learning to write in cursive,
Mhm.
or that one part where under 24, D's pure vanilla, good at what he does, which is nothing but zipper-lipped kissing, fucking, cuddling, goo goo gaga blah. My mom read this. And she was
Mhm.
she was like, oh, that's interesting. Like the baby like the baby talk right there. And that wasn't something
Mhm.
I'd noticed, but there is a lot of that. I mean, even at the end with the vulnerability and the crying and the I
Mhm.
don't does this make do you see this? Is anyone else kind of getting
Yeah,
this interesting? Yeah.
yeah. I don't want to. I feel bad that, we've kind of been joking along of calling this like, oh, we're going to talk about the golden shower poem, and
Mhm.
and now that, we're getting into it and everything, I think there's so much going on here, and it there's this weird overlap. I think all of us have a little bit of, like, psychological catharsis things like in our lives, that we could carry into adulthood, something that's just like, I don't know why, but like,
Mhm.
that whatever, like, like certain kind of blankets are always like super cathartic to me, or like whatever, or or I wish I had a better example at this moment. And so, because there's so many examples in here where this doesn't feel like kink, like it just doesn't. It feels like a very strange psychological cathartic vice. It's sort of almost like an exploration of this vice, and a knowingness of how off it might be. And
Mhm.
but also I think our bodies are very complicated, and there's a very thin line between like things that are just like very like comforting and things that are sexually comforting. And so I just think that, in our human experiences and everything, there are these overlaps.
Yeah, I mean, considering there's a lot of there's moments of like, like fucking and like lovers and things like that, like alternating that between like talking about your dad or talking about your brother, talking about childhood. I mean, there are definite like kind of like psychological implications there of like what what does intimacy look like in childhood? What does wants and desire look like in childhood? And how does that evolve into adulthood? And
Mm.
kind of putting all these memories and ages together the way it did. I mean, it would definitely switch like associations if you just did this in chronological order, right? It would just be a completely different poem, completely different story. The way the author kind of pushed the ages together and pushed these experiences together kind of tells a very fascinating story.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think there's even, an element of all of this in the title. Sliding my tongue along a gold mirror. What adult would do that? Like that to me is one of
Yeah.
those things, one of those things you do when you're younger that don't really make any sense.
No,
And then,
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be like a big question of mine, because I felt like, we obviously, like, we read this and we were all like, oh, golden shower, like, the slang of it all and everything. So to call it a gold mirror, um, like I don't I was having a little bit of trouble with the metaphor. We were talking earlier in our previous episode, about titles, and how I don't find them like all that important. But sometimes I feel like some people make titles to try and emphasize even more, like a point in what they're trying to say. And the sliding my
Mhm.
tongue along a gold mirror is so detached from everything else that's happening in the poem that I'm having like a really hard time just resolving like the two. Like I don't know, I'm having a really hard time connecting why, like, I don't know. I'm just having a really hard time with this poem, guys.
Yeah, I don't know. The title didn't I didn't really think too much about the title. It does um feel a little bit more like heightened, I guess you can say, compared to the rest of it. It feels a little bit lofty.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm not sure if that was just intentional because of kind of the subject matter, like the language itself throughout the poem. It it's definitely like the language of poetry, right? It feels very poetic in a lot of ways. Um, I do like I like all the kind of like I don't know what to call them, things of value, I guess, honey and oil and gold. Like there's all these very like kind of more kind of like rich or like decadent almost, I guess, these things that are throughout. I thought was interesting. Golden oil doesn't really like you said, Kate, it doesn't quite do it for me. It feels a little bit off. Like
Most
if
of
you
the
got,
gold didn't do it for me. It was a bit too much gold.
Mm.
yeah,
Yeah. Just that word kept popping up, I feel like.
there's a lot I can't fact check. Like I don't, is that the way it tastes? I don't know, man. Like let's just run with
Is you-
it. No.
and the precious excess. Yeah, like there's some of it is it's hard. It feels intentional. It feels like intentionally cringe in some of these, like yeah. My but I do like the line, what the body can't keep or keep for long
Hmm.
feels holy. That felt like an important line,
Hmm.
or at least a clue to perhaps some of this. But yeah, I loved that it's like, something that's in you, and then you're releasing it, and kind of this idea of trying to retain it and savor
Hmm.
it, and dwell on it, and all this kind of stuff. Drink it. I mean, Jesus. But yeah, it's like sour honey, oceans of piss, spit and sweat, bucket of salt. Yeah, like a lot of images are they're just kind of superfluous, I guess. They start to become a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up that line because I really do like that line about it feels holy or things you can't keep or keep for long. And I think time is one of those things in this poem that's kind of definitely plays a role. Like it's kind of the quiet background character that's doing a lot of work, just because you have the ages, you have the what you can't keep for long, you have the person, like you have the stash under the bed and having it go from yellow turns gold, turns orange, turns cider brown. Like you have these
Mhm.
passages of time and what that is doing to the speaker or what that is doing to the collected urine, all these things. So there's a lot, and I'm not sure how much of this is about the speaker growing older or the speaker looking back, if that makes sense. Like I
Mhm.
said, there's that juxtaposition between childhood and family, and then these older experiences of going out and exploring your interests and having these lovers. So
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the lovers because that really ties into Kate. I think you're right. I think that actually might be arguably the most important line about what doesn't last for long is holy because like even the guys that he's sleeping with, we have D, we have A, like there it's just kind of a cycle of transient, I don't want to say a revolving door, but it's like a different guy in each thing, and it kind
mhm.
of goes along with this whole impermanence theme that I think is here too.
So, uh, what do we think about stashing it under the bed?
I mean, you don't have a stash, Kate. Get on it.
That was interesting.
It is. And I like so I had seen a weird like Instagram reel about people doing this for health reasons, like it's some kind of like tonic thing, and I'm like, that can't be real, right? I have
Like
no idea. I didn't research it.
Robert Kennedy, whatever stuff, right?
RFK Jr. action.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
He's gonna have all kids drinking piss. Like, what a fucking weirdo, man. Sorry. And this is once again like one of those passage of time moments. It's like the nothing gold can last classic line of poetry. Like, is this one of those moments where like it starts off, it's gold, and then it doesn't last? And I'm like, if that is like a reference, I will be so impressed like nothing gold can last, and you're making it a very, very subversive way to talk about it. Like, but it could be.
If I was gonna take away more like what I want to think about more, I really do want to think about this idea of like a gold mirror, and I know it has to have some kind of deeper meaning, especially because of the line in the poem where like running my tongue along a warm mirror.
Mhm.
So interesting to me and so not anything I can understand. I want to know more. Like I want to know what that means. I want to know why that's the title. I want to know what it is about this kind of gold warm mirror and the word mirror and the idea of a mirror. It feels like
Mhm.
there's something being hinted here, and I guess I'm just too dumb to get it. That something of this kind of like seeing yourself and licking it. I'm really just kind of thinking it out in real time here. It's a tough metaphor for me.
Same.
Yeah.
So are we toasting or roasting it?
Okay, let's do it.
Yeah,
I can do it.
let's
I'm ready.
let's do it. Yeah, I think I can come up with something. But Alexis, as our guest, as the person who brought this poem to our table, you get to be the first one to weigh in. Do you toast or roast this poem?
No. Depends on the day. I mean, I
Yeah,
agree,
absolutely.
right? Like I see so many. I don't know. What about you guys? What are you gonna do?
Kate,
All right.
you
All
wanna?
right. All right. All right. So, hmm. Okay. So I like the idea of exploring human darkness. Like and I'll never ever begrudge anyone from doing that. And I don't know, this reminds me, I've had a few friends in my life, some people who are just like unabashedly honest, and they'll tell you the most humiliating, vulnerable things about themselves. And I've found that sexy in the past, it's people who are just they'll just tell you straight up what's going on with them. So I will say yes. I like exploring hidden aspects of human identity. I can't say I have heard that like sex and
Yeah,
pit like top tier like
top
kink stuff.
tier.
Yeah, I have heard for some people it's like
Awesome.
here. Like Michael, I did the research, did you? Top tier, like that it's like a high level kink, right?
Mhm.
But like cilantro, like some people think it tastes good, other people think it tastes like soap. So I personally love cilantro, so I guess this is not the right.
Nice.
Never mind. Never
There's
mind. I agree with Alexis. I'm like, pick a day and ask me the same question, and I will probably answer differently.
Mhm.
But I'm going to say that I feel all in all that as much as I admired the honesty in this, I think there were some very beautiful lines. Like I said earlier, I love the age breakdown and the complexities and just the multifacetedness of human life and how we change and yeah, and just our weird, just weird human cathartic crap that can overlap into different parts of ourselves. God, this is hard. Really, this one. I'm sorry, it's a hard one because I'm really on the line, but I'm just gonna go ahead and I'm gonna go on the roast side of this one. I think there's just something something that is missing and that it's so close. it's almost like it was almost there to kind of pull it all together and be like, wow, like this was really, but it doesn't have it there for me. So yeah, it's a roast for me.
So like I'm trying to like after the initial kind of shock of the subject matter, I'm trying to look at it just from a craft level. And it's one of those poems where I think there are a ton of craft level things that are working really well for me, especially reading it out loud. Like I like the line breaks, I like the pacing of it. It gets a tiny bit too long, I feel.
Thanks.
And I couldn't read a book of this kind of thing. Like it's really straddling that line between being what I would consider more like an art piece or like actual poetry versus what might be something that's a little bit too edgy for the sake of being edgy or shocking. I think they did balance it out really well though, and I thought they knew when to kind of pull back on certain elements. There was a couple of moments where I was like a little bit too much for me. Um, but otherwise, because of like the sounds and the craft of it, and I love the use of the sections as being age and kind of mixing up the ages like that. I am pretty much on just the other side of the toast section. As far as Kate is into the roast, I am about into the toast currently. I think to be able to write about something like this and not make it completely sensational,
Mhm.
I think is a really skilled thing to do. And like I said, getting over the kind of initial shock of it, like I don't think it's written for shock value per se. And I think there is a lot that the poem is saying about intimacy and vulnerability and like discovering who you are as a person and what your interests are, and kind of knowing that from the beginning, knowing that from a young age, and still being like seeing the child at the age of 4 talking about the father and playing with the hose, and then having the experience later where the father is deeply uncomfortable and possibly ashamed of the child as a teenager. It's like that is heartbreaking, and there are these moments in here that I think are genuinely beautiful in that like emotional psychology of it all. um so, and I don't want to, I don't know a ton about the author, like I said, so I can't speak to whether this is looking at experiences from a queer lens or whatnot, but I would assume that there are a lot of queer experiences that can speak to that feeling of feeling wrong right from the get-go, and feeling like what you enjoy or what you like is somehow just not right, and that people will laugh at it or people won't accept it or your dad will turn away and be speechless from it. And I think that moment, I think is a really heartbreaking, sad moment for a lot of people. And I think this does it in a way that I think is really beautiful on some level. So I have to lean into the toast there.
Hey,
Yeah. So there.
this was awesome. You guys are
Oh, wait,
awesome.
no, 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 no. Hang on a
You're not,
I
you're not just gonna walk away.
thought I thought I was slick. I'm gonna toast the poet for writing it and toast its existence. Um, but as for the poem itself, I'm leaning into roast category, just for the reasons Kate mentioned, and I agree with you about
Yeah.
length, things like that.
Yeah.
It somehow feels like something's missing, but that it should be shorter.
Mhm.
I don't know how to
Yeah.
explain. Yeah.
Yeah. I totally understand that. Yeah. And like I said, it's one of those where I couldn't read like a full-length collection of this kind of poem. Like it would just become a little bit too much, even if it was written as beautifully as this. I think this is written beautifully.
Yeah.
But I would need a lot of different things. And I don't know. I think they have a chapbook out. And I mean, if it deals more with different kind of like the relationship with the brothers or the father, or if is there a mother in the picture somewhere, who knows? So I just think there is a lot of interesting things going on. But yeah, it's a poem that I can't imagine being able to write much better than this person has written it, to be honest. Like that's a subject matter to
Yeah.
like, that really takes some delicacy. So
But
but
super
yeah,
interesting one to think about. So thank you, Alexis, for
yeah,
Thank you.
it is. It's really fascinating. Like,
Mhm.
it is. So
and also repulsive in a lot of ways.
That,
But
yeah.
Alexis, like, thank you for spending so much time with us on our like the beginning of your weekend, and here you are on a Zoom call with
This
I
me.
was
know.
so fun. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Anytime.
thank you so much. And like, please like keep in touch. Like if you
Yeah.
like just want to say hi, if you want to send us work. But
Uh,
no, seriously, if there's anything that you want to get help promoting or anything like that, like we are more than happy to help out. Like you are like a poet that we believe in. So
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
and
you.
now
yeah.
you're part of our Table for Deuce family now. So
Yes.
yeah,
All righty.
good.
Cool. Have a great weekend. Take
You
care.
too.
Bye.
Bye. That's good. Man, she is so talented.
She is.
She's a phenomenal writer.
I almost feel like we might have scared her a little. Yeah.
She's like, wow, very intense. But you know, it's a top tier kink, as Kate said. So
Top tier.
All right,
tier.
I will send you the article. All right, I will put it in the episode note.
Top 5 top tier kinks for 2025.